Welcome to BIG5D TV, a show dedicated to news and insights for the African Middle East local digital ecosystem. BIG5D TV is brought to you by Big5 Digital. This episode of BIG5D TV features two executives in charge of driving revenue at local media and marketing technology companies, talking about how managing sales teams and customer relationships have changed during the COVID era. George Leith is EVP of Sales at Vendasta Technologies, a global marketing technology firm based in Canada. Wayne Bischoff is CEO of Mediamark, a radio and digital audio sales organization based in Johannesburg. Full disclosure, Vendasta and Mediamark are business partners. The two executives discuss how they manage their organizations through COVID, and more critically, how COVID will permanently change how sales are made in the local digital ecosystem. We hope you enjoy this episode, and please subscribe to our channel. Typically, sort of how do you organize a remote company? What have you learned from, what have been the difficulties and what have you learned from the process?
Listen, the whole world changed for all of us, depending upon what jurisdiction you're in. And we're a technology company at our heart. And you would think, well, that was probably pretty easy for you to go from having 400 people in the building to having 400 people out of the building. Basically, at the end of the day, it was myself and the CEO and Carly at the front desk to make sure that any parcels that were arriving were being dealt with, and everyone else moved to remote. And it was an enormous challenge, even being part of a technology company. And keep in mind, the majority of our 100 plus sales organization do the majority of their meetings remote to begin with. But it was really that internal team collaboration that started to suffer. We're now in a phased coming back to work mode, and what we're finding is that the folks doing the work were the ones really asking for this. We didn't really know what it was going to look like, and we did a bit of a survey, and they were like, "No, we want to come back. We miss the routine, and we miss the camaraderie." So I think that while we didn't really notice any major downturn during the time, touch wood, and we didn't have to furlough anybody, and again, touch wood. We were very fortunate that way. What we did find though was that collaboration. 60 to 90 days being apart was really starting to suffer underneath the hood. And now that everybody's back, we're hoping to get that collaboration back into the culture.
It's one thing to manage and just, teams, internal teams. It's another thing to manage customer relationships. And you alluded to something a moment ago, which is relationships that don't currently exist, that you're starting to create, that you used to create. I'm not saying over golf and drink, that's a little old school, but in person. How do you do? Is that just something that just can't be replicated, or how did you find that process worked? And did you lose much, or were you able to work through it?
Well, great question. Interestingly enough, we're going to announce a partnership that was started here in the month of June that is the biggest we've ever signed, with the largest organization that we've ever signed by a long shot. And the majority of that was done with what we're doing right now on a screen share, because we had to. We didn't have a choice. And I believe, my friend and partner who will speak here in a few more moments, we've been working with his entire team completely remote during this time because we had to. And we didn't have a choice, because he wanted to be up and running when we come out of this thing, and we wanted to make sure that his team had all the tools. So here we are daily back and forth. So, I think that we've gotten better at that, whether it comes to being able to create that rapport with a cold lead or a lead that you just had been introduced to by using screen share. And we have this thing called, face up or cameras up. Like, you can't just have the emoji there. You've got to be like live on screen. That's just a policy that we have inside the organization. And I see organizations where you got to have I've got budgets been cut. So that's all I can afford for a backdrop is that white wall behind me. But, I see organizations that have green screens behind.
You closed your biggest deal ever remotely. Is there a silver lining lesson in this that maybe you didn't? Full devil's advocate here. Maybe you didn't need all those flights. Maybe you didn't need all that in person. Are you taking that lesson from it, or are you just simply, is the lesson more that we persevered, but we still would prefer the old
Charles, our CFO is taking that lesson from it. It's every friggin' month when we say we might go back to traveling next month, and he's like, "Yeah, but you're you're setting records without that investment. So I think that's happening in a lot of organizations because that travel number was the number we were having a hard time justifying. Now let's roll the camera back 30 years to when we started in the sales organization, and I'm talking about myself and Mr. Bischoff when we started doing this. And one of the most inefficient parts of selling was the door-to-door aspect of it, where you just basically knocked on all the doors and hoped that people were there for your meeting, and that it was inefficient. Because they would get called away by a customer, or they would ghost you and not show up for the meeting. And yet you come to your sales manager and say, I made 9 calls today. We really only talked to 2 people, and for less than 30 minutes. The rest of the time was spent driving around, having coffee, sitting in the parking lot, trying to find the place because we didn't have, a mapping device.
Right.
It wasn't efficient. So from a sales leadership standpoint, where you're being judged on efficiency and return on investment and whether the teams are producing or not, the ability to have a big brother view of that, I don't think that has as negative of a connotation as it used to. Now, we did Big Brother before, but it was on 4-legged call, and I could only be on so many calls with my reps in the field. So we're seeing an improvement of efficiency, and we're also seeing some pushback by legacy sellers that aren't used to that level of scrutiny.
You're phasing back in as we speak. But what is the normal going to be? Given that you used to do a lot of travel and a lot of 4-legged calls and so on, you've proven that maybe it's not necessary. I'm putting words in your mouth there, but so what is it just a little tougher justification of that plane ticket after this, or is it much more remote selling, or is it a hybrid of what was before and what it is now? What do you see happening, and what do you think the outcome will be?
That's a really great question. I've been thinking a lot about this. I think that inside sales, which is, SaaS software, has really been good at that. And there are entire organizations that have been built around improving the efficiency of inside sales, where you have that sales development rep that starts to develop the rapport with the customer, figures out if there's an potential opportunity, needs analysis on steroids, I call it. Mm-hmm. Then you bring in somebody that develops the partnership and the solution, and then you've got growth and retention teams. So that very segmented sales approach, I think you see that continue to just go to the moon, and all indications are showing that. I think you also see that e-commerce of some sort is the star of the show. I don't care what business you're in. I don't have to come see you to get, to give you the pitch. I could get on one of these and do it, right? So I think we're going to see that continue to grow. And we were already seeing that high value deals were starting to close without a face-to-face, in-person, get on a plane, buy the $300 steak dinner. Mm-hmm. I think that it'll be the true enterprise deals that are the ones that are going to be done, where it may require multiple touch points and maybe a face-to-face plant visit or something like that. But more and more you will see inside sales, and the amount of the deal that is able to be closed remote just continue to accelerate.
One last thing on this whole notion of, selling through this environment is, you kind of mentioned the legacy sellers are chafing at this a little. Has this changed the profile of who you hire in any way?
Well, you want to hire the very best sales professional that's possible. When it comes to the product and the platform and that, we'll teach that stuff, but you can't teach, creative thinking, business acumen, integrity, honesty, those kinds of things. I think it's more of teaching legacy sellers that there's just a new way to engage, and it's way more efficient, and you can actually have larger ROI. So the return on investment for a sales professional is our time. And if there's a way to do this where we can be more efficient, I think the true sales professionals, and I'm going to call it out, true sales professionals will see the opportunity. So it's a matter of framing it in a way that they can see the ROI from the shift. But it definitely is a lift. Any of the leaders that I've talked to that the reps are used to face-to-face, it's definitely been a rude awakening of 60 days. But the people who are good at it will recognize it as a true opportunity to be more efficient.
So talk to us about, just very briefly, what your pre versus post apocalypse sales model was, and then we'll talk a little bit about how you've managed through it.
Yeah, I mean, up to the sort of middle of March, traditional model was on the national side. We run around, we see the big ad agencies, we see the planners, we see the clients direct, we engage with them. backwards and forwards, setting up meetings, nothing virtual, nothing online. The direct sales team were out there in their cars, the good old way, hitting the streets, going to see the guys, setting up appointments, coming back, filling in schedules and drawing up creative plans and brainstorming. And then COVID hit and we sent everybody home, and very rapidly we had to get a whole company working offline. And that's, sales guys easier, they have laptops, right? So you're kind of used to it. But suddenly we had to have the finance teams, the back office, the creative teams, the ad operations teams, everybody working offline. So it meant getting laptops, making sure everyone was set up, getting data packages, which the first couple of weeks we realized this got really expensive. We had to look for better plans and maybe advise people they shouldn't be watching Netflix at all on these plans. And suddenly, the first couple of weeks were difficult, but what inspired me was that suddenly people learned to use Teams. We got Microsoft Teams as part of our package. We've never used it before. We didn't really use Zoom before. Suddenly we're all using Zoom and Teams and with clients, Google as well. And we adopted and adapted quickly because our clients adapted the same way. And now suddenly you're setting up meetings, learning how to engage, and then you're learning the tricks of the trade. Don't set up a meeting and try to do the same thing you did face-to-face, in a digital call. You know how to make it less loose talk, to the point, in and out quickly, raise your hand, don't talk over each other. It changed the way we operated in a super fast fashion. The one thing we also said was, since there was a massive decline in revenue, obviously, like all of us, was that we had to move from a model, especially, reaping, the rewards of reaping revenue, to cultivating relationships. So it became about, we're all in this together, Mr. Client. Let's not even talk about the money. How can we help you get through this? That was it about, how can we give you information, insights into your sector, special deals to keep you alive on air. We even had a gives back campaign to get small, medium guys live read commercials by, interviews on air for no cost at all, just to get them through this period with an image that, down the line will obviously have great loyal customers. So it became a whole different way of selling. It wasn't selling anymore. It was being there as a trusted advisor and companion to your clients to get them through this period. And as you said, there are, legacy guys found it more difficult, some of the legacy sales guys. They've adopted, there are very few left that are really making excuses. One or two will still say, well, I can't get to see my client directly, so, it's really difficult. Others have adapted so quickly, the productivity shot up. They really had the relationship with the client, so it's easy just to say, let's have a quick Zoom or Teams or Google call. Even WhatsApp, video calls have been used immensely with the guys. I think the area maybe the most difficult is brand new clients you didn't know, and establishing the rapport. And if our guys are all field sales, they're used to establishing rapport visually and face-to-face. So that's been more of a learning. And as we said, the inside guys, the telesales guys would be able to do that a lot better. They know how to establish that emotional connection through the phone. So that's the learning for us as well. But I've seen it's changed the way we operate. And I think the learnings will be there forever. I think we've adapted. I think we're more productive. And I think whatever way we go back to, we'll talk about in a moment, it will be very different the way we've come out of this. And we're still in lockdown, essentially.
Yeah, sorry. You're level 3, if I'm not mistaken.
We're level 3, and they've just reimposed the alcohol ban on Sunday nights, so none of us could go out, and it was immediate effect, so we couldn't go out the next morning and quickly stock up on wine. I finished my last red wine bottle the same night as our president spoke. So, yeah.
That's unfortunate, but so, well, I think there'll be a lot of people losing a little bit of weight that they weren't planning on losing just because they can't drink the alcohol anymore.
That's true.
That aside, I'll ask you the same question I asked George, which I think you were anticipating, which is, sort of what do you think the hybridization of the old way and the new way will look like as, level 5 will come eventually, and, you'll be out of this eventually. What do you think that will look like?
Well, I think the hybrid is going to mean that on the direct sales side, the guys that look after your smaller and medium businesses, there won't be as many physical face-to-face calls, maybe for brand new clients and new clients. I think part of their day is going to be, doing what we're doing right now. So I think we're going to have a call rate which will be double what it was in the past. It'll be this mixture of the two. I think what has forced us to become is a lot more digitally savvy. and not just understanding technology, but the training we've had with George and the teams as well, is they're going to be full hybrid guys able to offer a full solution to our customer base, which they never had a chance before to even learn, because you're out there physically on the road seeing clients. Who has time to learn anything more than just what you're selling, your product, your radio product? Now they've had time to sit back and study and learn and understand the full ecosystem, radio, digital streaming, SEO, websites, presence, and now they can offer a better solution to their clients, build up more trust, and we'll have stickier clients in the future. So that's on that direct side. On the national side, the big brands, I think we realize that we know these clients well. We've worked with them for years, all the big agencies, the Group M's, the publicists, the IPG groups, is that we don't need to get out and see them every single time. We can set up these calls and get online and do a deal. We're doing some big deals this way. We're doing creative concepts, presentations. We've got a huge webinar this week, again, with 500 people in the trade. So it can be done. I think we've learned that quite quickly, that we probably get more attendees on a webinar than if we had a physical event at our offices. Obviously, we want to get back to that, couple of glasses of wine and establish that. That's part of it. But I think we're realizing we can do both. Mm-hmm. And we can be more productive and we can offer better value.
Because it seems like you both learned a lot about what you didn't really need to do before and what you can actually get done this way. I know there's things from the old way you are looking forward to bringing back, but maybe not as much. You're doing more content online, things of that nature. I'm just wondering how this changes the composition of your team, if at all. I'm assuming some at least.
Well, the way we work, I think in the past you had the sales guys frontline in front of clients, and you had the sort of middle office, the creative guys, concepts, the back office, ad operations. Strangely enough, this has broken down the silos completely. We're in one big building at different levels. Now even our Cape Town office, we feel a lot more closer as a team, as teams. If we're sitting and discussing a client, we're all in the same room together on a Teams or Zoom call. When we present to a client, we have everybody together who needs to present in front of the client without having to, take it back to the creative guys or the concept guys and back at the office. So it's broken down as silos. We're operating more as a whole united team that's going to deliver a solution for a client. And that's the big change for me. It's destroyed silos, strangely enough. And in many ways, it brought us closer together as a company and how we operate. It's brought us closer to our best clients. There's an intimacy we've built up now. Anybody you speak to, whether it's internally, our customers, our own staff, the first thing you ask about is how you're doing. How's your family? How are your kids? How's schooling and online schooling doing? Have they gone back to school yet? You establish that intimacy first, and then you talk about business. So it's completely changed, from the old I to the we kind of collaborative, approach. And I think that's going to stand us in good stead forever. The relationships we're making right now, it's going to set us up for life with our clients. If this whole COVID had been 2 months, it would have been over quickly, wouldn't have had these new habits get set in their ways. So to me, having this longer process of lockdown, it's actually in some ways going to make us a lot more of a future fit company and a lot more dynamic, dealing with our customer base and our own staff. So it's counterintuitive, but there'll be some good that comes out of it. Every crisis, there's a silver lining.
Do customers like this better?
Chatting to a few customers that I know well, that I can speak to, they said, listen, we love your guys. They're great. We love seeing them, but something often I don't have time for them, or they'll come see me and I'm looking at my watch the whole time. Now it's quick. I can have a quick half an hour session with them and I can say, gotta go, thank you, goodbye, and I'm off. So they're enjoying it a lot more. I think we're getting a lot more pushback from clients that know us well to say, I know you want to come see me, but I'm really busy. Let's just do this online. Which so the customers enjoy it more.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think it's changed the way we operate.
George, do you mind coming back and answering the same question? I think you may have touched on it, but I'd really love to get your take on that.
No, I'd agree with that. We're hearing from a lot of customers that it's, they actually feel more connected because we aren't waiting until the monthly in-person QBR or monthly business review. They're able to reach out in a more efficient manner. Plus, when they reach out to their account manager, that person's here. They're not on the road on a plane or in the travel piece of it. So definitely I believe the efficiency has led to better customer service. It's just a matter of, again, there are certain issues that you've got to be across the boardroom table for on those larger deals. So we haven't saw a lot of that up to this point because both sides can't travel. But I think that as you look into other jurisdictions, because we deal all over the world, if there were some markets, like we could go to Europe right now and do a deal, but I can't go to the U.S. to do a deal, and I can't go visit my friend Mr. Wayne Bischoff because you can't get into South Africa. So
I can't go.
There are those geographical issues that we're having right now, but as long as you're hitting the numbers, Charles, I don't think there's going to be a lot of scrutiny on it. It'll be like, oh, everything's going great, but the minute you start missing on the numbers, it'll be like, oh, we should get you back out on the road and go see some customers. So
exactly,
that's a fair point. So I'm hearing what you guys are saying, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't want to be in the hotel, airline, or restaurant business 6 months after this or a year after this, because all those business expense accounts are going to be cut because people figured out that it's all a big scam. I mean, that's overstating it tremendously. But where am I wrong on that exactly? I mean, because I'm trying to separate out what piece of that old, relationship building face to face is going to survive. 10% of it, 20% of it. I'm thinking it feels like maybe it's a quarter of it. I'm wondering what each of you think of that.
Yeah, I think it'll probably be cut down by at least 2/3. In terms of the travel, and it's going to be cut down by 2/3 more than likely. I mean,
permanently.
I think permanently. I really do. I'm going to realize that we don't need to, have those face to face all the time. You want to have them. It's important for relationship building, and you want to see each other because we're human beings. We need to be energized by each other, and I think that's what we all miss. Even my Cape Town team, I don't see them except, I'd love to get down there and have a proper water cooler moment around and chat to them. It's not quite the same. We have something on a Friday with them, a sort of Friday drink session through a Teams or Zoom call. And it's not quite the same, obviously not. So I think we look forward to be able to get around the table. And that's still a very important part of our culture, because, it's all about culture as well.
And George, you're more bullish on the in-person culture internally, but then there's the external question. I think was more about the sort of, how much travel really business travel really comes back. And
I agree that with Wayne, it will look different. I don't know what the percentage is going to be at this point. I think it also depends upon deal size. I think that if you, and what you're offering to the customer, if there's a level of automation there, keep in mind, we've got a new group of buyers that are moving into business ownership positions, especially on B2B. And that group of buyers have been raised on apps and a phone that isn't a phone, and the ability to use that computer in your pocket to do everything. So as I had lunch with a gentleman who's now controlling the marketing spend for 20 auto dealers here recently, and he said, I see my future being a little bit different than my father's, who ran the business before me. I don't see all my best friends being media reps. And, so here's a young lad that grew up in the industry, watched his father build very good relationships with a group of people that were very important to his business. And he sees that his relationships might be a little bit different in a digitally transformed world. I saw a great article last week around what this is at a very, very high level from McKinsey. And it was around, this is the way the customer wants to interact. So it's actually putting the power back into the buyer's hands. And if the buyer is saying, I don't need to see you, let's do a screen share. I'm too busy. I'm remotely running my business. That's the best way to interact with me. That's the way we're going to move, because that's where the demand is. So the supply has to meet that demand. And that also comes in the way that we conduct our businesses, as digitally transformed organizations.
Which kind of raises a point that's made a lot lately, which is this notion of acceleration that is talked about a lot. Acceleration of digital transformation, acceleration of the move to remote work, and the sort of disbanding of the sort of central business district, things that have sort of were considered long-range trends. And the other one is, I think that's something you alluded to a moment ago, which is this sort of app-based ecosystem and an app-based mentality, which is much more transparent, and much more transactional, I would argue, in the sense that decisions are made, sort of, based on information that's available to everybody, research, and maybe less based on personal relationships. I don't know. Is that fair? I mean, it's sort of what you were talking about with your friend's son running the dealer group now, that he's probably making decisions based on a very different set of criteria and much less on personal relationships. Is that fair? And how do you see that evolving?
Well, we hear it everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that you could go into a CEO or a CFO's office anywhere without some level of data to support your hypothesis and the goal that you're trying to help them achieve, or the problem you're trying to solve. I just don't think that walking in and opening up the trench coat and saying, want to buy a watch, is going to work for you anymore.
Well,
like, prospect says, I have 3 watches, right? So, but my thing to this is, anywhere that we can find ways to improve that experience, we're going to have to compete, because the buyer is going to probably find it even before us. So, we really need to be thinking 4 or 5 steps ahead in that, and transactional and transparent. It's interesting that you brought up those 2 items. So there's nowhere to hide, because we can figure out if we're being bullshitted. And then number 2, I have a wealth of choice. So we better make sure that we're delivering a very high level of customer satisfaction. That all points to the best are going to survive, and the wannabes are going to fall by the wayside now, because there's less room for you to be half-assed doing business today.
Any different thoughts on that, Wayne?
Look, as you just said, I mean, with budgets dramatically less in the sort of marketing and advertising game, we've got to work that much harder to please our clients, because if they have more options, they're going to press you harder, right? So you've got to, you can't just sit back and say, you need me, I don't need you, like maybe in the old days. We're going to help you get to an audience and help you sell your goods. You've got to go the extra mile, and I think it's changing the way we engage with our clients completely. But it is a very different world that we're going into right now.
And you feel that this moment felt like more than a moment for sure, has prepared you for that very different world. I mean, it's preparing everyone, but you have to
preparing us every day.
Mm-hmm.
It almost feels like one huge experiment that we're going through. We're forced into this experiment. And on top of that experiment, we've got, through the lockdown laws of the country, there's no cigarettes being sold or alcohol. We're all going through rehab at the exact same time as the great experiment, So we are learning every single day, and we are reaching out to each other, and we're asking questions of how you're coping with this. We're sharing ideas. Every single call we have with a client, online call, we're recording those as well. So we can play it back and go through it. We have a whole training division, and then we play it back. We learn, we see what could we improved upon. We have a debrief after big calls, after big presentations with clients. We have something called hot desking. We do virtual hot desks, and we have a debrief. So everything's recorded. So we're so much more detailed about our approach that we're finessing all the time. We're iterating all the time, which in the past, you probably just stayed in that same, wheel. So we're going to come out of much more refined, detailed business. And I think the people that will keep on board into the future will be very different, types of salespeople as well. So to me, there's only good that will come out of this in the end. Right now, we can't see it because we're all just in survival mode, but we're having to think, and I'm having to say, just don't stick in survival mode. You got to keep looking, where do you want to be in the next year? Because when anything's survival mode now, when suddenly we come out of it, then what? So it's a mix, it's a balance of survival mode, learning, iterating, keeping that culture and keeping hope alive, inspiring your people, and then where do you want to be in a year's time? And I think there's an immense amount. We're learning, we're sharing data, we're looking internationally what's happening. We involve organizations around the world, and we're trying to see what can we do to be better when we come out of this. And we will. We're going to come out. This should go on your CV one day. Led through the Corona crisis.
Absolutely. One final question, which is another thing that's talked about a lot, is what opportunities does this present? And obviously, we've talked about opportunities to learn as an organization and to change how we do business. That's one way to think about an opportunity. But can each of you talk about another opportunity you've spotted through this, whether it's an opportunity to consolidate a market, to go into a different business, to make an acquisition? I mean, anything, and if you can't talk about it, I understand, but anything that's an opportunity that's emerged from this, from your organization, that is unique to the crisis that you can think of that you could share?
I can jump in quickly. The one thing, I mean, we've been working on a whole strategy to move from just pure radio with a little bit of digital or digital streaming to being an audio digital solutions company, right? So we've been driving this whole separate sort of division for one while digital audio streaming and starting advertising on those streams. And what's happened with the lockdown is that listening has gone up on radio, on podcasting, on digital streaming. So there's been a massive increase in listening because you're at home and you want to you also trust your radio brand to give you the real news, not the fake news. And that's at the same time we were on this path to take full digital solutions through George and the Vendasta group to market. And this whole COVID crisis accelerated that. And suddenly there's a bigger interest from clients as well that, well, I'm working a lot more online. I need to have a full digital strategy and presence, quickly. And e-commerce is going to have to be a key part of that, which we're going to offer as part of that as well. So interestingly enough, it's kind of been the perfect storm to accelerate this whole movement. It's almost like you out there, you're trying to paddle on the waves and this big wave grabs you and takes you to shore. So that's, I think it's accelerating that whole movement to the digital space. And we're trying to offer a full ecosystem to clients. And, this has accelerated that whole move. We just signed with a big digital tech company called AdsWiz, US-based, Silicon Valley company, which offers programmatic digital, audio advertising. And that's all happened now. And it wouldn't have happened as quickly, I think, if we weren't in this space.
Great. George, do you have one?
Yeah, I think that, we want to make sure that we have that level of agility that we probably always needed. I think it's something that it's interesting. You see it in companies' core values and things like that, where they want to make sure that on a day-to-day basis, they don't forget. It's really the ability to pivot and to capture the opportunity that exists. And the opportunity that exists is there is a level of trust out there that organizations have. We like to call them channel partners, and they have to leverage that trust to solve more than just one problem. And that's the expectation of the buyer as well. So, to Wayne's point, it's really interesting to listen to the amount of folks leading organizations talking about it gave us the opportunity to train new skills. It gave us the opportunity to reset the organization and make sure that we were right-sized and we had the right resources in the right places. So, that ability to take a look at your organization, look down the road, see where the opportunity is going to be, to quote a very famous Canadian, Mr. Wayne Gretzky, I tried to skate where the puck was going to be, not where it is. And I think that that's a very important piece in running a business today, more than it's ever been, if we're going to thrive and survive in these very challenging times.